Well, coming off a bye week, you believe that we had a good week. You know, we gave them some time a little bit, which is always nerve wracking, especially in this time. Um, but they had in some ways, later Friday, Saturday, back here on Sunday off. So, um, but through that bye week, sometimes I wish we didn't have a bye week when things are starting to roll and you're getting into a rhythm, especially in a year like this. But nonetheless, we, at least got away a little bit and got to kind of regroup and then get back at it here this week for the first travel week. And that's going to be obviously a little bit different. And I don't just mean a normal travel where you only have, your 70 some guys or 72 guys, but just travel for the first time with all the different protocols and things like that, we got to get out of the way and make sure it doesn't interfere with anything that we're doing, because this is going to be a really, really tough one on the road against a very, very good opponent. So it brings a lot of different things to the mix, and like these times do. But nonetheless, it's going to be a big matchup for us.
Guys, go ahead with questions. Chad, you want to move us on?
Sure, Coach. They have a rush and linebacker in Xavier Collins that's having a big year so far. Is there any way you can scheme him away, or you just have to hope you can get in front of him a couple times and keep him on the quarterback?
Well, obviously, I don't know if he's leading the country or the league or whatever in sacks. Lots of tackles for loss. He was a guy 2 years ago as a defensive end, and then as they switched their scheme, kind of became that one of those bigger inside linebackers in how they play things. So he does a great job. I mean, he will blitz, which I think becomes the fourth rusher on, a good amount of times. But I think he's more impressive just as a linebacker, running through gaps, getting quick reads, being downhill. Obviously, you got to know where he's at. But I think more than anything, scheme-wise, we got to really be aware of how they do their three-man front stuff to try to give him and the other linebackers a little bit more of an opportunity to read flow and run down through gaps. So it's hard. It's difficult because it's such a unique scheme to say, hey, we got to make sure we get a hat on him, because if it was a normal 4-3 defense or, things that you knew and, feel comfortable about what it is that you're getting, man coverage and things like that, I think you can do a better job even with protections and pushing things towards those specific guys. But I think in the uniqueness of what they do scheme-wise, I think it makes it a lot more difficult to say we've kind of got a plan on how we're going to handle him as a rush guy and him as a run-through linebacker.
Coach, they've improved a lot the past couple seasons. Outside of Collins specifically, what have you seen them do to get better?
Well, I mean, offensively, I think it starts with the quarterback. And I think they've got skill guys. They've done a good job, whether it's with transfers or grad guys. But I think in the last, at least year and a half, now they've got a guy at the helm that kind of can run and kind of, I say, manage the offense. They don't panic. Last week they got down 17 points, and you don't see a panic like they got to just start slinging the ball down the field and making big plays. They stick with what they're doing. So I think that's obviously the offensive coordinator, that's the head coach, but that has a lot to do with the quarterback. And to me, we played them last year was the first time, so I'm not like I've got a long history of Tulsa or Coach Montgomery and them. But you definitely see last year they came in here with only a couple wins, but I thought they were a really good football team that was getting a lot better. And it had a lot to do with the management of how they do things defensively, and then obviously the quarterback and how he managed the game offensively, knowing what it is that they want to do. And so I think offensively it has a lot to do with the quarterback. I think defensively, the little bit of the scheme change up that I think probably has helped them tremendously. And I think all in all, that kind of goes hand in hand with their ability to not give up big plays defensively, with the ability for them offensively to be able to manage, not panic no matter what the situation, and still kind of, be a little bit more, I'm not saying methodical, but a lot of times you think about these offenses and the Baylor offense back in the days of slinging the ball and, down the field and all the big plays, when I think they are a little bit more of, hey, let's be smart about what it is we're doing. We know we've got a good football team on all sides and all faces of the game, so that we can manage things a little bit better.
You mentioned their scheme defensively a couple times. How similar is the 3-3-5 that they run to what you guys run, or is it completely different?
Uh, I think they got a little more variety in some of the things that they do. I think their front wise is a little bit different. But in some ways, at least with guys off the ball, guys with vision, I think it makes it, a little bit more difficult at times for offenses because they're just not positive as to, who's in the fit, how are we pushing, what are we doing. I think they're a little bit more, I don't want to say exotic, but they're a little more different with even the alignments of their fronts because they get some different looks to those guys up front that are hard to identify. So there's some similarities, but I still think their ability to play a little bit more zone coverage, a little bit more 8-man drop defensively can give some offenses a bit more of issues in different ways than ours.
What unique steps are you guys going to have to take on this first road trip of the year under the veil of COVID-19?
Well, I think obviously being tested early on Friday mornings is something that's different. You've always kind of had a routine of how you do things on Fridays as you get into your really game weekend. So obviously things are going to happen a lot earlier and a lot sooner. And then just the ability to travel. You're limited to a number of guys. In our league, there was never been a limit on how many guys you could take. And sometimes you'd even take those injured guys that were big parts of your team. Now you're limited to 72, and so you really got to kind of be honed in on what it is that you're doing and who you're able to take, and then just the protocols of hey, how are we going to travel? We haven't done it yet. I worry about the airplane and is that some of the issues with teams that have traveled, and so there's some things I think internally we're just making sure that we're really kind of all on the same page of how we're going to do things that might be different for all of our guys. And the first time you do it, you just don't want them to be talking about that as opposed to the football game. Hey, when we get there, we're going to do this, this, and this, and their minds are on, oh, that's going to be different. How are we going to, eat, or as opposed to, hey, this is a business trip. We've still got a football game to play. It's going to happen really early. So there's some unique things that we got to do better than I think we've done in the past.
Coach, you talked after USF about wanting to have maybe a better plan for Dez at quarterback moving forward. How has he looked the past couple weeks in practice, and do you feel like you have that plan for Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's a whole part. It's not just it's ability to not, and I say plan, not to put as much on sometimes on the shoulders of the quarterback. But it is a position that's uniquely different than any other position in the country. The quarterback position, whether you're a college quarterback or an NFL quarterback. So we understand that there's things on their plate. I just think that we got to do a really good job at trying to simplify those things for him so that we can get him into a groove. And sometimes that just means, not doing all the look stuff where he's got to make a bunch of different calls and checks and, hey, let's get up there and let's be a little bit more physical. Let's maybe run the thing downhill. Maybe it's not a perfect play, but sometimes it gets us into a little bit more of a rhythm. And in my mind, sometimes that takes, even some of the pressure off the quarterback to make a perfect check and a perfect, protection on every single thing that we do. So I think it's a combination of us all, me included, of, hey, let's just make sure that, more than anything, we get this thing off on the right foot. That doesn't mean, you got to score in the first 2 or 3 possessions. No, it just means that, we give the guys some confidence and the ability to not have to be in perfect plays and checks all the time so that we can, get a little bit of a rhythm going. And I believe we have. And again, those Saturdays are always uniquely different because you're not guaranteed to know exactly what you're going to get. So you got to be able to adjust and adapt sometimes on the run.
Coach, I was going to ask you, how do you see the AAC shaking out this year?
Got no idea. I mean, I think you're gonna see that all the way down through. Do I think there's a lot of really good football teams? Yeah, there's a lot of ball to be played. You don't know a ton about Houston, but obviously I think they look pretty good. I know a lot about Tulsa. They are a really good football team. You're going to have SM. You're going to have Met. There's just so much still out there, and I think with the way the year is, you're going to just see who can manage all the different flows because everybody's going to go through different things within their programs and how is it managed, how can you still push forward and perform throughout this entire thing, and you'll see how people handle it. So I don't, obviously to me there is no favorite. People can say, hey, well, you guys are. Hey, this is a unique year in a really good league that I think you're going to have to see really through this entire, 7, 8, 9 next weeks, how a lot of things are going to fold out and unfold.
This is a very 2020 question, but are you going to have to talk to the guys about the difference in going to Tulsa and having some fans in the stands?
No, because I don't. I mean, I've actually tried to figure out as to what they're allowing. I haven't heard yet, so maybe you can give me some insight on that.
I don't have a specific answer yet, but there's talk of them having people there. I don't know the number yet.
I think.
Find that out for you.
Yeah, why don't you please? I've asked Cause a couple times, but he hasn't come back to me just yet. So we could throw him under the bus right now. No, I think that our kids would love to have fans. I mean, there was some talk to this thing being moved to a night game. And one of the big things was, well, if you're going to have a bunch of fans and we're going to be able to get an atmosphere there, I think our kids would love that. Maybe we don't, think it's the best thing for us, but in the long run, to me, what's best for our kids is what I want. And if they can put some fans in the stands and create an atmosphere, I would love that nothing more. I think our kids would love that nothing more. Does that give them a little bit of a home field advantage? It might, but I don't think that it's going to outweigh just creating an atmosphere for all these guys to be able to play in.
13% capacity.
13. Okay.
13%.
That's pretty quick. I figured maybe Cause would come up with that before you did, but he's still in there typing away at the computer, I can see, and you're a little quicker than he is.
Just trying to monitor, Coach.
Multitasking. We'll work on that.
Coach, I know Ben was unavailable against USF. There's a couple other players. Are you able to speak at all to whether he'll be available Saturday or any of those other?
I don't know just yet. There's a lot of things we got to be able to see, and the good thing is it's only a Tuesday. It's still early in the week, so we'll have a better idea. Hopefully, as we get closer, doesn't mean that I'll tell you, but you that are out at practice will have a better idea. You don't know. I mean, there's, like I said, that's kind of the ebbs and flows, and there's a lot of uniqueness to trying to put things in place and have a plan. Sometimes when you don't know exactly who's all going to be available, but I hope we have him back, and I hope he can come back to practice, because I think that's the unique thing is guys that are just available for games. This isn't the NFL where you can not have any practices. Maybe like there's going to be an NFL game tonight. I'm not sure how many practices they've had. Maybe they can do things as pros via Zoom to prepare them to really go out and play. I think we need a little bit more on the practice field. So some of those guys that aren't available are kind of tough to think you can really count on.
How's he feeling?
Alex, he's got a chance. He's looking better. I think that that it's going to be a little bit further along to see how he kind of handles the entire week. But I would hope and believe we'd have him in some capacity, and what kind of volume we can get out of it, we'll have to see.
Anybody have any questions? Further? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
I got one more, Cos, if you don't mind. Sorry,
Go
Coach.
for it.
13%. Oh, I didn't know.
I know.
Maybe Kaz had some.
I know you don't care so much about the polls, but you're number 8 this week in the AP.
Polls, like what poll? Flagpole?
The top 25.
Oh, they still do that? I thought in COVID they got rid of those.
They still do. I think
They
you
do?
actually are supposed to vote in one of them.
Really?
Like whose responsibility that gets farmed out to. But this is what you did it for, though, right? I mean, think back where you were 3 years ago. The fact that you're a top 10 team in the poll isn't that part of kind of the whole plan and mission?
It's not about where you start, it's where you finish. And we will continue to reiterate that. All things are great that give you, some stuff for our program and our kids. But nonetheless, it's about where you finish. And, it's all part of the process of continuing to move forward. And, if we get wrapped up in that, it's either way it can kind of hurt you, can stunt your growth. So I don't know what kind of polls you're talking about, but I know that I'll take a peek at them at the end of the year. Thanks.